Hello and welcome to today's daily news analysis. So today is 20th of January 2021 and we are covering today's Hindu newspapers Delhi edition. Now as part of our initiative, we share questions for answer writing practice. So today we have two questions, particularly on domicile-based reservation, a trend that is taking place where the states are imposing reservation on the private sector to employ localites. Right, so we are covering this topic, very important. And the other topic is about the city governments. So this was an opinion in today's newspaper, so we are covering this with reference to what reforms can be taken up with respect to local bodies, urban local bodies. Right, so these are two important themes that we'll be covering. Okay, now coming to the first news. So this is with reference to Supreme Court's directions with reference to the COVID related deaths that are taking place, particularly in the second wave. Now, if you may remember, sometime around April, May, June, Supreme Court, because a lot of deaths had taken place. So during that time, Supreme Court, as part of its judgment, it gave an instruction, it gave a directive to the government, and this includes center as well as the states. So it gave a directive that, the children who had lost their parent, either parent, or they got orphaned. So such children should be provided some sort of compensation. So rupees 50,000 each, depending on if they lost one parent or two parents. So rupees 50,000 each has to be provided to that child. And for this, the data can be taken up from the Bal Swaraj portal. Now, from the context of a news, what the Supreme Court has noted is that the state governments, there are so many state governments, so they have taken a very lax approach to this judgment, and Supreme Court does not like this. So they have taken an exception to the bureaucratic red tapeism and this approach of not giving money or listening to the Supreme Court very kindly. So it has said that it will take action if it doesn't. The officials do not enforce the judgment of the Supreme Court. Okay, for our exam point of view, we have the Bal Swaraj portal. Right, this is important because a question can be asked as to what is Bal Swaraj portal, or it is associated with which of the following: the issue of child labor, education, COVID related deaths, none of the above. Like that, a question can be asked. So we need to know more about this. Now coming to the Bal Swaraj portal, this was specifically created by the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights. It was specifically created so that it was possible to track children who had lost both its parents or either of it because of the COVID-19. Right? So it was specifically for this purpose. Now, we also need to know about the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights. So this is a statutory body, that is, it is created by an act of the parliament, or it is created by a statute, which is basically the Commission for Protection of Child Rights Act 2005. It comes under the aegis, it comes under the control of Ministry of Women and Child Development. And what is the task? It basically deals with the issue of protection of child rights. So what laws can be made, what policies are required, programs, etc., which the government needs to incorporate to ensure that the protection of the child rights, the welfare of the child is taken into account. So for this purpose, this body had been created. Now coming to the next news, this is about the IS cadre rule changes. Let me just briefly give you a context over here. We have essentially three categories of services. So one, we have the central government. If you look at central government, something like Indian Army, foreign services. So people who are solely with the central government. Then we have a state government. So people who are employed by the state directly, who are limited to the state. And then there is a class in itself, a different category altogether, not a new service, a different category altogether, known as the All India State Services, or All India Services actually. So these are the people who are appointed by the center, so appointed by the president, but they function with the state. So services like the Indian Administrative Services, Indian Police Services, Indian Forest Services, these are the three services. The people of these services are appointed by the center, but they function within a state. Therefore, when you refer to an IAS officer, you will read IAS officer from Punjab cadre or Haryana cadre. So they deputed to a particular state, and for majority part of their service, they are belonging to that particular state. And from time to time, they may be deputed to the center. Naturally, most of the central government has these IAS officers, and there is this Ministry of Home Affairs, Ministry of Defense filled with IAS officers. So they are basically IAS officers of the state. From the states, they are deputed to the center, and then they will go back also. Right? So there is a concept of central deputation. So the states sponsor that. Now the DOPT, Department of Personal Training, which looks into the issues of services, right? So they have said that the states are not sponsoring, they are not sending adequate number of officials. Center raises demand, so the states have to send those officers. So the states are not doing this commitment. So for this purpose, the DOPT or the center has, is looking into the option of a rule change, whereby the permission of the state will not be required for deputation to the center. So this is going to be an issue where you can look at it from the federal perspective, federal cooperative federalism, etc., where there is going to be a tussle between the center and the states, because center is now encroaching into the domain of the states. And we can also say that there is, to some extent, the states are also wrong. It's quite common to see actually that the states are actually not deputing officers to the center. So this is not right practice. Right, so this is going to be a federal issue, particularly those states which are not ruled by the BJP, where BJP is not there. So they are particularly going to raise this particular issue. Right. Now coming to this news, which we are covering it from for our answer writing practice. In fact, you can read the question. So what are your views on the idea of domicile-based reservations in the private jobs? Substantiate. Right. Okay, so you have read the question. Now coming to the news over here, and we'll cover the question side by side. So basically, sometime back, Haryana state government of Haryana, or the state of Haryana, introduced a bill. Bill is essentially a proposal for a law. So bill ultimately becomes an act, so it is a proposal. So Haryana State Employment of Local Candidates Bill. So according to this, there is a condition that people who are investing in the state of Haryana, right, essentially private sector, or people who are working in Haryana, the private sector, so they have to ensure that at least 75% of their employees, and particularly the employees who earn less than rupees 30,000, so they have put a limit also. So people who earn less than 30,000, 75% of such people should be having a domicile from that state. They should be locals from that state, right? Why did they do so? Because it is seen that the cities come to, not just with Haryana but any state, so they establish their operations, they start working. There are a lot of state GDP is increasing, national GDP is increasing, but locals are not getting employed, locals are not getting jobs, and ultimately they protest also. So to accommodate that workforce, the localites, into that company and get them employed, the government has come to this, has basically come up with this bill. And Haryana is not the only state. Jharkhand is coming up with this proposal. Jharkhand is making a new law. Telangana has already enacted a law on similar lines. Karnataka is also contemplating a new law on these lines. So different states are thinking on this particular aspect over here, right? So we can see that domicile based reservation in private jobs is becoming a reality. So what are your views on it that you have to express over here? Right. Now we'll consider with the point of view of Haryana, because we have Haryana news, but yes, you can take it with respect to any of the states. The issues are going to be common over here. So what do we see? why did this come into existence? First of all, we see that the center is basically the state or the government is basically saying that onus of creation of jobs is not for the government itself, it is also for the private sector, private sector. They also have to create the jobs. That is their responsibility also if you want to do their business, right? And makes sense. So the locals should also get benefited as a result of this. Now, what are the concerns? The concern is, the various stakeholders have said, first of all, they say that this law is unconstitutional. You are discriminating on the basis of one's place of birth, which is not permitted. So it is violative of Article 14, equality before law. Article 15 again talks of that discrimination should not be done by the state. And then we have Article 16, which looks into the matters of employment. In fact, all these state, the laws that the states are coming up with, it is using the provision of Article 16, which says equality of opportunity in matters of public employment. Now you see a problem over here. The bill is with reference to public employment, but they are enacting it for the private sector. So this power is not there, but still they are doing it. Okay. Further, it says that discrimination shall not take place on the grounds of one's place of birth or residence or any of them. So either on the basis of the son of soil approach or on the basis of domicile, not permitted. Simple. And furthermore, to create, if the center decides that, if the government decides even then that yes, residence can be a criteria, that can only be done in matters of public employment, and that too by the parliament. So the state legislature does not have the authority to do so. It is only with the parliament, and that too with reference to public employment. Right. So this is it. And appointments are posted in favor of any backward class of section. On those grounds, it can be done, but we cannot declare residence or place of birth as a criteria for backward class. That is not possible, right? This is wrong. So it is violative of Article 14, 15, 16, and we can also say Article 19, which provides for the right to do business, the freedom to do business, and it also provides the freedom to move to any place and establish one's residence or settle over there. So it is violative of that also. So it can be seen as unconstitutional on those grounds. Furthermore, it basically, you can see that government is transferring its burden of job creation and employment on the private sector over here. And the private sector feels that it is not going to find merit as well as skills because just from that locality, it is very, very difficult. It is very difficult, and it has to, it has to depend on the migrant workers particularly. It needs that freedom. So most of the workers, 99% of the workers would fall under this category of people who are earning less than 30,000. So it becomes difficult. And many a times, these workers that are there at the lower levels, they are not in a formal employment. They do not have, they are not salaried as such, but they are on contractual terms. So when there is more work, they hire, and when there is no work, they put them on the layoff. So the company cannot again look into this criteria every time that the person is local. So that will again make it a bit difficult. Now think about it, just from the Haryana perspective, you have Gurgaon. This is all in the NCR region. So Gurgaon, then there is Noida. So around 50 kilometers away, but similarly placed. So if such criteria is there, the companies would say, why do we stay in Gurgaon? Why not move to Noida? Right? So it affects the competitiveness of that particular locality. So this is again a problem. So companies or investors would be wary of investing in that location. So on those grounds, on the economic economic point of view also, this is problematic. Furthermore, we can also say this goes against the ethos of Ek Bharat Shresht Bharat, where people can freely move from one place to another, and there is harmony amongst the people. So here the states are focusing upon their domicile, their local population. So this will create problems. right? And it will also affect the welfare of the migrant workers, because the jobs, if you look at the job market also, if you just look on the maps, it is around the major cities, in the mega cities. So it will affect the prospects of jobs for the migrant workers who are typically coming from the backward areas where there is no jobs, where the economic activity is bad. So this is problematic. So I hope you can now write an answer on this, on this particular topic. So what are your views on the ideas of domicile-based reservation in private jobs? Substantiate. So it's very simple. You just have to explain the concept. You can explain by referring to the newly proposed laws. You can refer to the Telangana Act also. So you can do that. Then you can explain the rationale behind it. You can bring out the issues, and you can conclude suitably as to what points that you want to bring about. Now, if such a question is asked, don't go very deep into the provisions of the constitution or the articles, because then your article will be too narrow-minded on the constitution. If a question specifically says about the constitutionality, then you have to go deeper into this Article 16 argument. Okay, here are some judgments. I think you just take a screenshot, right? These are some judgments that you can refer when you're writing your answer. But that is only if the question specifically asks you about the constitutionality or the views of the Supreme Court. Okay, now moving on to the next aspect, that is, this is about important for prelims, dip in eastern swamp deer numbers. Okay, there is this class of swamp deers. Swamp deers are basically Barasingha, right? So Barasingha, and within the Barasinghas, they are found in many parts of our country, particularly our central India. So Kanha National Park and Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh also. But eastern swamp deer is endemic. It is restrictive to the eastern side of the country, obviously. So it is found in the Kaziranga National Park, and it is being said that in these swamp deers, eastern swamp deer, is moving from Kaziranga to Orang National Park and Laukhova Bura Chapori National Park, Bura Chapori Wildlife Sanctuary. So now you need to know about this eastern swamp deer. Some basic idea you need to have. Kaziranga is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, so you need to know. And also Orang National Park and Laukhova National Park. Now what are the things that you need to know? Eastern swamp deer is endemic to eastern India. That is good enough. Furthermore, you need to know about the IUCN status, which sadly I could not find, but we have the IUCN status of Barasingha, which is vulnerable. Now coming to the national parks, UPSC has a tendency, either it can ask you with reference to the flora or fauna. So some unique flora and fauna that you need to know, because most of it is very general. There is a tiger, there is elephant, there is lion is only in Gir, right? So you need to have this, only those special ones you need to keep in mind over here. So you don't have to remember all the species. And other thing they ask is with reference to the rivers. So national park and river, this is a very recurring theme in UPSC prelims paper. Okay, with reference to the Kaziranga also, there was this reference of these birds. Even the population of this eastern swamp deer has come down. The population of the birds, the waterfalls, has increased. So these you need to have some idea about the birds that they are located in this particular geography. Okay, so Kaziranga is also becomes important because it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it is a site which is very famous for one-horned rhino, which is also found in these areas, Orang and Laukhova. Right. Now I told you about the river thing, so I'll just give you one example. So there was this question asked, if you can see, they will not ask you very obvious ones in prelims. So they will put Kaziranga with Manas. And you would think that the Brahmaputra river is passing through Assam, so it becomes a bit easy. You had an idea that Manas is around near the Assam region. You have that idea. So here you have to be very specific, because if you see only Kaziranga is there, even the Orang National Park, it is to the north of Brahmaputra. So they are alongside Brahmaputra river, again Dibru Saikova. But Manas National Park is at a bit of a distance. So it is on the tributary of Brahmaputra, which is known as Manas River. So you need to have this idea over here. Likewise, there is a river from the eastern side, that is the Barak River. So you need to know about that geography. So you need to have that awareness when you are when you're looking at the atlas. So this awareness is very, very important for your prelims. Okay, Miss Kerala, and to be very honest, when I was reading this for the first time, I thought it was about some model. Well, this model is actually a fish. This is an ornamental fish, and very famously kept in the aquariums in Kerala, this region. So Miss Kerala is actually a freshwater fish. This is something that you need to keep in mind. It is a freshwater fish, and it is endemic. Endemic means it is native or restricted to a particular geography. So it is endemic to the rivers, the hill-flowing, fast-flowing waters of the Karnataka and Kerala. Most commonly found in these rivers over here. Right? So it is found in these rivers over here. Its scientific name is Sahyadri denisoni or even Denison barb or Puntis denisoni. Actually, it says that wrong entry has been made, so it should have been Sahyadri denisoni. Now, why was it in news? It was in news because Wildlife Protection Act is being amended. A change is being made. And within this, new species are being added. So Wildlife Protection Act actually deals with the protection of the wildlife. So your national parks, your wildlife sanctuaries, animals like tigers, rhino, etc. all comes under this. The protection that comes, it is coming from this law over here. Right? So I mean this you need to keep in mind. So it is coming from this law. Now the protection also that is given, that is different for different species. So there are very few tigers, they are very, very important, so they are under a higher category. So they are listed as Schedule 1. The less important one is in Schedule 2, then Schedule 3, then Schedule 4. Right? Schedule 5 is something, then last comes Schedule 5, where species can be killed also or hunted. Okay, so Schedule 1 is most important, Schedule 4 is less important. So this fish has come into the category, is proposed into the category of Schedule 1, which is problematic because there is this, the people who are engaged in aquaculture and who are selling these aquariums, etc. Their economic activity is getting affected. They say that this fish is no longer endangered. Yes, when it was found, when it was first seen, this was 10-12 years ago, that time it would have been fine, but today this fish is easily available, so why make this under Schedule 1? If you do this, our economic activity will get affected, and this is unreasonable. All we need is good regulation. So regulation can be done if it is under Schedule 4. This is good enough. Okay. Now coming to this news on, this is with reference to empowering the cities. So I have this question before you. Discuss various issues related to urban local bodies in India. Now let me just come to the context over here. So basically the Reserve Bank of India, Reserve Bank of India, they said it appreciated that the role that the cities can play in dealing with issues of the citizens like containment strategies, there was a pandemic, so containment, healthcare, or even with respect to disaster management. So cities play a very, very important role. And think about it, cities are the place where the people actually live and they are densely populated, right? So cities are very, very important. And for this very reason, the cities should have more autonomy. They should have more autonomy, right? They should have more freedom as to how they want to govern itself. More power should be given to the cities. And they should have more financial means at their disposal. So they should be financially empowered. That is how they are able to raise taxes from the people, raise revenues from the people by means of taxation. That should be very easy. Maybe some share of income tax can also go to the cities directly, because cities are contributing to the income tax, because the rural sector is not paying the income tax, so it is only coming from the from the cities, people who are earning, right, who are into the urban activities. So those people are actually paying income tax, which is a great source of revenue for the center. So these are the two things that it says it needs to be focused upon. Now, why do we say autonomy and financial empowerment? Yes, one aspect I shared. Thing is that, in our country we have three dimensions, three-tier government. So we have this, at the lowest level we have the local bodies, so urban local bodies as well as the rural local bodies. For a purpose I have just added urban local bodies or cities. So cities, then comes the states, and then comes the center. Clear? Okay, so this is it. Now what we see is, even though city is the closest to the people, they have very limited means. The cities were given more powers under the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act. More powers were shared. Many powers were devolved from the state to the cities. But even then, they do not have much say. They do not have adequate financial powers. And even when we look at the autonomy also, think about it, when any disaster takes place, or even for the pandemic also, we may see the Prime Minister directly talking with the district magistrate, but not looking into the aspect of consultation with the elected representatives of the city, like the mayors. So this is one example where we can see that the mayors really do not have much of a say. Directly it is coming to the district magistrate or district officials. So this is problematic. So this again goes against the ethos of decentralized or grassroots democracy. It goes against those ethos. And again we know that even though cities contribute a chunk of the revenue, the cities contribute about 2/3 of the GDP is coming from the cities. But even then, city in itself does not have much financial resources. This is problematic. And most of the income tax also, the key source of revenue for the central government, income tax directly goes to the center. So this again is coming from the cities. So 90% of income tax is coming from the cities, but city do not get much, still do not get much from it. And in fact, the money that it actually gets, the money that it gets from the center, it is coming from the Finance Commission, recommendations of the Finance Commission. So it decides how the money will be devolved from the center to the local bodies. The most of the money is coming from the city to the states and then ultimately to the cities. And it is estimated that only 15%, the 15% of the expenditure of the city is coming from the grants, while the main revenue sources like the income tax are directly going to the center, which is problematic. So which undermines the functioning and the autonomy of the cities, right? So this is very problematic over here. Now in this reference, we have the example of, if we consider this examples here, we have the example of Scandinavian government. Now we have seen the problem. Now we are coming to what can be done to address this issue. So here we have this example of Scandinavian countries, which are often cited for good governance. So in this reference, these countries, the income tax that their cities generate, most of it goes to the cities only. So most of it goes to the cities, and something like this should be done in Indian context also. In fact, the UPA government, during the time, the committee was formed and they also recommended that 10% of the income tax that is coming from the cities should remain with itself. So this will augment the financial resources of that particular city. Right, so and this will also, may allow the state to have allow the city to have better policy or to attract investments to that particular city. Better infrastructure. If there is better infrastructure, it will attract investments. It will make cities more attractive for the people to settle over there. So this is again a financial incentive also. Okay, so this is what this author, who's a former mayor of Shimla, is actually suggesting over here. Right, so this is one thing over here. So so it basically says that more autonomy should be given more autonomy, more powers should be devolved from the center and from the states to the cities. It should be there. More means of finances, particularly something like income tax, a share of income tax should be given to the cities, as well as more financial powers to the cities. The states can devolve certain powers of theirs for collection of revenue. That can be done. Likewise, the cities should not be seen as a medium for just attracting investments, right? We see cities as key, that city has a favorable environment for investments. So IT companies will come, manufacturing will take place, etc., etc. See, it says, the author says that we should do away with this approach where we are just concerned about the economic side of things. We should be looking at cities from a holistic point of view. We should look at the cities as spaces for planned development, right? So this is basically to do with an approach to the functioning of the cities, and cities should have a say on how they want the planning that takes place. Now, even if you look at the smart city program, the smart city says that the city, the resources are coming from the center again. So cities make plans, they give it to the center for approval, and then the center allocates money for this. This again is wrong. I mean, it's still an improvement, but still it is a bit not so right actually. And they have to also take into account disaster management approaches into their urban governance. So these are the other things that needs to be kept in mind. Okay, so this was about the opinion, and now let's see if we can attempt the question over here. Discuss various issues related to urban local bodies in India. Mention measures to strengthen urban local bodies in India. Okay. So first of all, when we look at the urban local bodies, we can, when we look at the issues, we can identify them on the basis of 4 F's. In fact, this article tells us about 3 F. 4 F's are framework, functions, that is the powers that the state has devolved to the city or the urban local bodies, or for the panchayats also. So functions, the domain area, basically functions. The people who do their tasks, so functionaries, people, they should be having people who can perform the specific task. They should have that expertise also, so that is important. And lastly comes the finances or the financial empowerment. So when we were looking at the autonomy side, we were looking at the functioning and the financial aspect. And if we have to look at the issues with the urban local bodies, we can say that the cities do not have, the powers are not adequately devolved to them. There is a problem with the functionaries. They do not have the skilled workers, they are not trained, they do not have the competence as is there with the center or the states. So this is problematic. The elected representative does not have much power and say, that is again functionaries. And then comes the financial means. Anything that has to be done, any function that has to be performed, for that money is required. So financial empowerment is empowered. So any answer on urban local bodies or rural local bodies can be answered within the framework of the 4 F's. Now what measures can be given? So measures we just did over here, right? So you can list down some measures as to greater devolution of power has to be done. Emphasis of greater say of the elected representative, more power should be given to that person. The provision of transfer of income tax or retaining of the income tax with the cities. So such recommendations can be mentioned in your answer over here. Right. Now coming to the, we have two actually, okay, international is left. Okay, so just a brief about the national news. I'll tell you what was there in the international also. Yeah. So new COVID-19 cases cross 3 lakh marks, right? So some indication. So basically, even the positivity rate is declining at this moment. Then with reference to the railways, imagine any disaster takes place, or railways are, the trains are functioning on the rails. Now any disaster takes place, earthquake takes place, it's quite possible that the rails may be affected because of that, but the railways continue to work. So railways need to keep in mind, if any disaster takes place, they need to have some sort of policy on that, right? It cannot work on ad hoc basis. So till now, on the basis of earthquake, they do not have proper guidelines. And there are particular zones like the Rajkot, Gujarat area where there is a high possibility of an earthquake where of high magnitude. So rail infra may get affected, and this may affect the safety of the people also. Likewise, now we are moving towards metro, right? Metro commutation also. So keeping in mind, if any disaster takes place, what steps are to be taken? So for that, guidelines have to be prepared for that. So this was basically flagged recently. Okay, Chinese army has abducted. There is an incident taken place in Arunachal Pradesh where they have abducted a local youth who was actually engaged in hunting. So maybe accidentally encroached into the around the patrolling area of the PLA soldiers, and they abducted him. So this keeps happening. Full market approval for vaccines recommended. Till now, Covaxin and Covishield is only for emergency use. So now they are saying that full market approval should be given that so many people have been vaccinated already. HAL signs contract for copter export. So basically, we have this advanced light helicopter Mk3 version. So this should be given to Mauritius. So India, if you can see, it's Make in India. And India is giving it to Mauritius. Even Ecuador also, it is providing its helicopters and defense equipments to these countries. So they are giving this helicopter as well as they are giving Dornier aircraft DO-228. So here is this advanced light helicopter. This is created by the Hindustan Aeronautical Limited, and it is also known as Dhruv. So this is a utility aircraft, basically imply that you can use guns on it, combat. You can use it for moving soldiers from one place to another, whatever task, disaster management, for anything it can be used. This is actually from the website of HAL. So this was an advertisement of aircraft available for immediate deployment. So this is the Dornier aircraft. Normally it is with the Indian Coast Guard, right? And it is saying that even in the Indian context, for implementation of the UDAN scheme, which is to do with regional connectivity, where there are very short runways for within the airport. For that also, this aircraft is very suitable for that. Right. International news is left. Somehow it is not captured. It was basically, one thing was about the Taliban. So Taliban is wanting international recognition. Taliban acquired the control over Afghanistan, and nobody is recognizing it because it is a militant organization. So Taliban wants international recognition, and now it is putting pressure on Islamic countries that, you see, we are Islamic, we are an Islamic government, we are implementing the Sharia law, so why don't you recognize us? We are an exception among so many countries which are working on constitutional values. So we are democratic values, we are implementing the Sharia, and we are implementing the Islamic law. So why don't you recognize us? So they are putting pressure on this, right? And international recognition would means more legitimacy to this government, and it can engage with other countries. So that is also possible. It can put diplomatic pressure. And more importantly, at this moment, Afghanistan is undergoing a humanitarian crisis because of the war, and it wants aid. So that will also be helped because of this international recognition. Okay, second thing was, Indian Foreign Secretary has met its US counterpart recently. And this becomes particularly important in the context of the recent tensions between Russia and Europe in the present times. So there is a concern that Russia is preparing for an invasion of Ukraine. And as a result of this, US is also concerned, US and Russia are rivals. And US is going to the side of Ukraine. In fact, it has also promised to provide it with adequate military equipment to defend against Russia. So Kyiv is the capital of Ukraine. Right. Now, in India's context, India is concerned because India has good relationship with Russia. India has acquired the S-400 missiles and many other things, and if US-Russia relationship gets affected, this may affect India's ability to acquire their defense equipments from Russia, right? And if India does trade with Russia, then it will undermine its relationship with USA. So it's a very complicated relationship. Right. So this is it actually. This is it from me from our side over here. So this concludes our daily news analysis. So you're watching this with me on our channel IAS Primus. And you can share your answers with me on my Telegram channel. So there is this community for this answer rating initiative. Right then, bye bye, take care, and all the best.